At ChavezzSlovakia, we host a myriad of satisfying content. And to continue that trend, we will do satisfying reloads. The art and reload animation, I have no idea what this is suggested to me. This is a video I'm sure has just been thrown to people. Hey, you know what? Let's do it. I trusted YouTube with the prison escapes video. I will trust them again with the reload animation video. Play. You know what? I shot all that and the recorder wasn't on, but I will share the highlights of my excitement. It's like,
okay, give me
they know me and I got skidding into fucking FPSs. So, wow, this is, the editing is actually nutty. What the fuck? What did I just get hit with?
Yeah, that was me.
Alright, so now we're back. Play. It actually will drive me nuts to rewatch this, so I'm sorry, we're here. How do we do this? The intro was too good. Fuck! Alright, I gotta rewatch it. The intro was too good. It's gonna drive me nuts though, but yeah, we have to. This is not even what I thought I was here for, even though it's true to the title. I thought it was just one of those weird compilation videos, you know what I mean? This is actually real shit. And this shit is nutty. Like, actually nuts. Look at this.
You know, in retrospect, this probably sounds like a pretty pointless topic for a video disguised under a fairly pretentious title, but I genuinely believe that reload animations carry a lot of weight when it comes to making a good FPS title. Wrong footage.
Ooh!
I think it's safe to say that video games have always had a pretty intimate relationship with firearms, and when you consider the circumstances, it really is a match made in heaven. The way we're able to handle a multitude of weapons within an immersive simulated experience without the legitimate consequence of actually being shot in the face kind of exemplifies the appeal of first-person shooters to begin with.
That's the wig caps, not that. Okay.
As a result of this, we've seen two things happening. On the one hand, it's a genre that's allowed developers with an idea specific to the first-person shooter framework to play with the mechanics and craft something unique. But if the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 17.5 is any sort of indication, it's that this genre is undeniably the most oversaturated, at least from a AAA perspective.
I was about to say, oversaturation is weird because FPS is a genre of game. It's like saying RPGs are oversaturated, but his point being that this title is just dumping out the games as quickly as they can touch their toes.
Look, we could sit here for hours and discuss the ways in which this genre has become seemingly stale, but instead of elaborating on that sweeping generalization, I instead want to show some appreciation to one specific aspect of first-person shooters that I hold near and dear to my heart.
Right.
The art in reload animations.
And if you're somebody who was, you know, I kind of missed the train on the first Call of Duties where the zombies became really popular. Okay, I didn't even really start playing until Black Ops. And so that was something I had to gain appreciation for from the first-person perspective. I didn't even like first-person games in general at that point. So that's something that has grown on me for a while. That look and that feel.
Let's get started.
Please.
Making the player achieve a sense of satisfaction is something that designers are always striving to perfect.
Nutty.
Now you could consider the ways this can be accomplished from a more conceptual standpoint, such as satisfaction from the completion of a challenge, but what I'm referring to is much more tactile in nature. The way something feels, the way it looks, how does it sound, how does it move? When properly utilized, each of the previous characteristics can convey a certain feeling.
That's the game that's where you mine shit.
Vulnerability, strength, weakness, total fucking disappointment. When a game invokes satisfaction in even the most minuscule of ways, it aids in making the overall experience far more enjoyable, even when it's lacking in certain other areas. And for a lot of people, it just so happens that being presented a high-quality reload animation triggers such gratification pretty damn well. Hey, I still fucking remember the first time I was taken aback by a satisfying reload in a video game. It was around 10 years ago, whilst secretly watching Left 4 Dead 2 Let's Plays on my parents' shitty desktop that came topped with a crispy 256 megabytes of RAM.
Facts.
But it was specifically the combat rifle, Left 4 Dead's rendition of the FN Scar L, and the moment the character releases the bolt and it slides forward with a gratuitous click. It was something magical. God, I sound like a psychopath, don't I? But a reload serves as more than just visual stimulus. If anything, it's probably one of the strongest foundations of a first-person shooter. The way a weapon reloads can really communicate a lot about said weapon.
Right.
It's a balancing act, but at the same time, it's also a subtle way of dictating the pacing of combat itself. Is this supposed to be a fast-paced action setting like, say, Battlefield? Are we looking to achieve a somewhat grounded and methodical approach to fighting, such as Day of Infamy? Maybe your character is scared shitless and gun illiterate within a survival horror scenario like Alien Isolation.
Which is the game I'll never play because of that, because I hate that feeling. By the way, not gonna do it.
Hell, is the act of reloading so utterly redundant that it doesn't even need to be there in the first place? Cause, I mean, you can get rid of that shit if you want to. Doom did it a while ago and that actually worked towards the game's strengths.
Right.
Well, minus one gun that kinda needs it to make any sense. The point I'm trying to make is that the speed of the animation comes down to the intention of the developer. A great point of comparison lies with games, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Insurgency Sandstorm. You might be thinking, wait, how the fuck do these two compare in any way? And I get that. Complete polar opposites in terms of setting, technology, design, perspective, story, whatever. But the one thing they have in common is the primary way in which they allow the player to interact with the world around them.
Red Dead was an experience, and it's one that you're going to enjoy for years if you get into the game deeply. So I don't know how I feel doing that comparison. But let's see how the guns do it. Shit's crazy.
Red Dead Redemption 2 has quickly paced combat, requiring the player rapidly snap between targets to dispatch them as fast as possible.
Bow, bitch. Bow, bitch.
And the
Give me that
existence of the
cash.
aptly titled Deadeye mechanic only helps to exemplify this further.
Clap them all down.
Having fast reloads to maintain consistency under these circumstances really is only natural. Arthur Morgan is able to reload these rudimentary weapons with such speed it'd make the professionals shed a tear. And whilst at times it does appear as though it's a little sped up, this is clearly an intentional design choice to facilitate just how frenetic gunfights can be. And I'm okay with that. Is it unrealistic?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But the game would probably be shooting itself in the foot if it decided to replicate just how frustratingly tedious some of these old school weapons can be to handle.
The combat is so clean in that game. The first time Skitten handled the controller in a crowded place, she shot 3 people. So it's a very fast-paced combat. And effective. Hella fun, too. It makes you feel like it's
Red Dead
easy.
chooses not to dwell on the process of reloading, but in peeling back the curtain and looking at these animations from a first-person perspective reveals a stunning amount of competency and detail in its animation that you can really appreciate. I mean, it's not like I expected any less, really. This is a game coming from the same people behind such classics as Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah, I still haven't fucking forgiven you for that one, Rockstar. All things considered, Red Dead 2 is a little notorious for how frequently it decides to flex its animated muscles. But for a game that's played predominantly from a third-person point of view, it really shows the lengths they're willing to go for their craft. This is a quality that Insurgency Sandstorm shares with Red Dead Redemption 2. However, the speed of reloading exists on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Insurgency focusing to achieve a realistic military sim-esque atmosphere, but it's light enough on the realism part that you won't be bored to tears. The technology is modern, faster, more powerful, more intimidating. Gone are the days of stripper clips, on-block clips, and singular round loading mechanisms, notable exceptions withstanding. Now, we've got magazines, drum mags, belts, much more user-friendly designs. All that's really asked of you is that when you're empty, you just take one out and replace it with another. I might be glossing over some of the finer real-world details, but it's simple in theory. Combat in Insurgency feels much weightier. Guns recoil violently through sustained fire. They snap loudly whenever the trigger is pulled. But most importantly, even despite the giant leap forward technology-wise, the act of reloading takes much longer than most other shooters. Sure,
Okay.
it's slower, but not really to the point that there isn't some sense of urgency to the character's movements.
Right. Which is why I was thinking about this whole thing in Call of Duty. When you use light machine guns, it is awful.
There's a real emphasis placed on timing your reloads right in Insurgency. You don't want to be caught with your pants down when an insurgent rounds the corner with a loaded AK. And I understand that there's an argument to be made about how the speed of reloading could interfere with the gameplay, but I think they've hit the perfect
you
middle
mowing
ground.
these dudes
and
down.
besides, the meticulous effort put in by the
That is so
animators
clean.
to make these incredibly detailed animations that hit all the beats for a very satisfying reload is undeniable. If you want to take a better look at some reload animations with just as much
That's
care
so
put into
clean.
them as these, there are plenty of great view model animators on this very website with channels worthy of note. Some of my personal favorites being Mr. Brightside, who worked on not only Insurgency Sandstorm but also the original Insurgency and Day of Infamy respectively.
I was about to say, I'm about to not know who these people are, but I actually know who Mr. Brightside is, which is hilarious.
Haru, if you like beautifully precise movements, Sully, if you enjoy some good use of exaggerated motion and a bit of stylization, Minty Mintness, if you're a fan of memes, and Hyper, who you've probably already stumbled across either from one of his many animated reload shitposts or because you've played Titanfall 2.
Who's your fucking DJ, bro?
But what is it that makes a good reload animation? What exactly constitutes as satisfying? Whilst of course
Clack,
the word
clack,
satisfying
clack.
does imply subjectivity, I think when it comes to reloading in video games, we all pretty universally gravitate toward the same things. The M1 Garand is kind of a testament to that. You've likely heard of the 12 principles of animation, 12 essentials that animators should always consider in order to achieve the most lively appearance of motion.
I've absolutely never heard that. Ever. Why are there so many?
After religiously watching someone else's hands on a screen put bullets in guns for the past few months, I've picked up on a few principles, so to speak, that work to make a reload stand out.
See, 3 is a lot more friendly to me because I don't know what you're talking about.
These are the things that even through a controller
killing
or a
it.
mouse and keyboard help to communicate the weapon so well I can basically imagine myself holding it. It's really nothing complex. After all, I'm a simple man, I being someone who typically chooses a gun based off the noise it makes over how well it performs, so you really don't have to do too much to get me hooked.
Dude, aesthetics is the reason you play video games. Do not worry.
Weight and timing. I mean this in reference to how the weapon moves in the hands of the character. The first part there is fairly self-explanatory. Take for example the Beretta M9 in 2 different
got you.
games. In Killing Floor 2, the characters swing the weapon around effortlessly, and that's representative of not only how heavy it is, but also how influential it'll be in later play. Whether that last
Trash.
part's intentional or not, it gets the point across. Going
God
back to
damn.
Insurgency Sandstorm, the weapon holds a little more value. The character moves slower, appearing as though the gun weighs far more than its size would imply, like carrying around a sack of bricks with one hand, but that's not a bad thing. If anything, the extreme actions of its animation only serve to emphasize this point.
Right.
Touching on animation theory again, an extreme in animation is the moment when a motion is at its most extreme. Essentially, they're the few frames that describe specific movements. With reload animations, you have a lot of opportunities to really emphasize these points. Pulling back the bolt on a rifle, breaking open a double barrel, taking out a magazine, bumping in a new one, loading individual shells, releasing a slide. It all depends on what kind of gun is being used. In the case of our M9, you see that upon releasing the slide, the weight of the motion brings the gun and the character's hands slightly forward and down, the extreme being the moment where the gun is at the peak of its forward movement. And
Gotcha.
hey, feel free to go crazy with just how exaggerated the movements are. But what ties this all together is the overall timing of each movement. Improper timing only serves to break how strong an animation feels and how real it looks. One thing in particular I've noticed is how some animators will prolong the extreme frames in their animation to emphasize the strength in each movement.
Yeah.
There are many games
yeah.
out there that have captured this concept perfectly in a lot of instances, but let's focus on this footage of the double take from Titanfall 2 animated by a familiar name.
That's a good one.
Capturing these few extra frames where the character/weapon is caught in the decay of their previous action really helped to convey an animation of these extra frames takes much of its punch away, resulting in a far less impactful set of movements. Another good example lies between one of Titanfall 2's weaker animated links, the Hemlock BFR, that I really don't like, and its subsequent remaster in Apex Legends that I genuinely love. Fuck me, the animations in that game are really good. Detail and accuracy I think should go without saying, but it's certainly not a deal breaker. When animating weapons, it goes a long way to have a fundamental understanding for how they operate. It's not even that you need to highlight every single minuscule detail. Simple things like having a different animation for both a premature reload and an empty reload can go a long way, and if anything these days, that's become the norm. But some games are simply willing to go above and beyond in this regard. Battlefield 1's acute knowledge of knowing when to use clips, when to load singular rounds, or when to use a combination of the two. Or better yet, Killing Floor 2's expert attention to detail with completely different sets of animation for both skilled and unskilled weapons, having a base of 4 unique reload animations each, and others a total of 6. It's fucking ridiculous, I swear to God. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't need to be that excessive. All I'm saying is that staying accurate to the source and showing those fine details can go a long way.
We're following you so far. This is a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be, but I'm in it, dude. I'm still in it. I'm even referencing all of my experiences with the different guns from Call of Duty, or like even Warframe, when I played Warframe, and why I enjoy certain weapons over others. You know, my first time using a revolver in Call of Duty and really feel like I'm clapping people when I was actually better with the 3-round burst weapon. It never felt as good, you know, so I'm with you on that, dude. Also explains why my mom likes the AK-47 so much in Call of Duty. She just, that is the only weapon she ever wants to use, and it's probably because of that powerful feel it has, not because of how accurate the weapon is or anything like that. So I got you, man. This shit is right on.
Sound design. Sound design really ties the whole thing together, as catching the ear is just as important as catching the eye. When handling a weapon, you want to hear those beautiful metallic sounds of polished metal sliding back and forth, pieces locking into position, the clinging as finer mechanisms are readied for the next shot, not the sound of someone fumbling around with 20 different versions of the exact same tin can. When it isn't done well, it stands out, and in some cases it disappoints. People anticipate the sound of a gun before they even use it, so when you give the people a weapon as exciting as this, it's best not to let them down with this. The sound design works in harmony with the previous two principles, and when careful consideration is taken to make sure the sound perfectly mixes with the animation, the results can be glorious.
Ooh.
In summary, reload animations can be pretty
what the hell is this?
And mesmerizing. Especially when they're done well. And until the day comes that guns begin to generate ammo without any exterior input, I doubt they'll be going anywhere anytime soon. Well, unless you're making a Doom-style game or some yeah, you know what I mean. I just hope to see more first-person shooters in the future focusing on the weapons as much as their contemporaries. And hell, maybe after all this, I've even helped you to possibly find some new level of appreciation for this aspect of the genre. All I know for a fact is that I'm likely on some sort of government watch list thanks to all the shit I looked up in the research phase of making this video.
As long as you put animation around it, maybe you'll be okay. Or maybe they've seen your YouTube channel already, so you don't have to worry. I cannot believe how great of a video that was. I did not expect to run into this today, and it's one of those things where only 100,000 views? Yo, this shit just blew up on his channel. Of course his last upload was over a year ago. This shit was... I can't even believe how great that was. That, man, you might have just Backstreet Boys yourself. You might have just peaked. Dude, that was one of the best videos I have ever seen on animation in my entire life. Not animated clips, ones critiquing animation or about animation at a very specific genre. I can't think of a better one I've ever seen in my life. That was spectacular. I really appreciate the work you did for that. That was crazy. I'll see y'all, man. That was actually nutty. Peace.